Welcome to the Divorce View Talk Show. Hello, I'm Joanie Winberg, divorce mentor and founder of FreshStartAfterDivorce.com and GettingAlongSolutions.com. It's always my pleasure to do this show together with my co-host, Rosalind and Sedacca. Hello, Roz.
Hi, Joanie. Great to see you again this week. I'm excited about our show. I'm Rosalind Sedacca, a divorce and parenting coach, founder of the Child-Centered Divorce Network for Parents, and author of How Do I Tell the Kids About the Divorce? Why don't you tell us about our very special guest today?
Absolutely. Well, we've been getting some great feedback here, so I think finding that right partner is hot stuff here. So we have actually dating relationship specialist, Betty Russell, and she's going to talk to us about how to really learn about some of the powerful skills that you need to have to find that right partner. So welcome, Betty. We're thrilled you're here.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, let's jump right into it because, as I said, we've been getting some positive feedback, and you know, people even after divorce, you're ready to find that one and hopefully not make the mistake the second time around, so to speak. So maybe kind of tune us in as far as what you see from your clients of what they feel, but then also bring out some of those things that you help them find to find that right partner within themselves there.
Sure. We start with making sure that you're ready for a relationship. Maybe we think we are, but we have to do a little bit of homework to prepare. It's important to process going from a couple to being a single. There's a lot of inner work that we do.
Can you give some examples of what you recommend that people do? Because we all hear this, but maybe people really need to know, because sometimes that might hold them back if they don't even know how to get started.
Right. First of all, I tell people to take time to grieve the loss of the relationship that just ended. Grieve the loss of what could have been, and just really take your time to rediscover yourself. Process things what worked in the relationship, what didn't work in the relationship. What did you learn about yourself? What would you like to change in your next relationship? Sometimes we don't know what we don't know until we have a relationship that had a lot of unmet needs. So those would be things that they weren't aware of. Mm-hmm. So we start there, and we identify our core values. A lot of people just don't take the time to sit down and do the work. What's important to you? And a lot of people don't even know what core values are. And I always remind them to think of them as markers to tell you whether your life is on track or not. And when we're feeling out of alignment, maybe doing things that are against our grain, being talked into something or something you're uncomfortable with, that bumps up against one of your core values. So they're pretty easy to identify. It's just taking the time to sit down and do the work. We start there, and then we look at what do you want and need in a relationship. And these are things not tall, dark, and handsome. They're not characteristics of the person. It's
but they need to be on there, right? They want to be on there.
Right. It's like, what do you need in that relationship? If you have a value for honesty, you would want someone to have that compatibility. Honesty, integrity, fidelity, those are pretty standard.
Do you say though? Do you mean like the deal breakers? Is that what you're saying?
Right, and then we go on to the deal breakers. Those could be characteristics of a person, like a smoker or something like that, or someone who doesn't have an addiction, or a person that's financially stable. Those are deal breakers. Or if you're in the situation or age range, that you want to have children and they don't want to have children, that's a deal breaker. You can't have half a child. So we identify the deal breakers. We talk about why they want to date. Some people just want to date casually for recreation, socialization, companionship, to go out to dinner with, and other people are intentionally dating. They want to find that committed relationship. So it's important to know why you're dating. Then we work on where, how are we going to do this? And usually, online dating is so popular now, and it is a good resource. It has its pros and cons, like everything else. But we work on writing their profile, getting some nice pictures, both that project what they want to project. It's hard to write about yourself, and that people feel like, well, I'm being arrogant or I'm too humble. So I help them. We go through a process of writing down all their good attributes and picking from it, and really writing a good profile that kind of have you at hello kind of thing. And then what you're looking for. If you haven't taken the time to identify your wants and needs in a relationship, it's hard to write that second part of the profile, which is what you're looking for. So we work on that, and then I help them kind of screen out people. Whenever they get an email from someone, we look at things that are said and things that are not said so that they can screen out people. Because for every person they meet, they have spent hours communicating with this person, looking at profiles, deciding, that's got some potential. And I tell people to get offline sooner than later, because you don't want to waste a lot of time and end up with this, email pen pal kind of relationship. Because if you don't have the chemistry or, the connection when you meet in person, you're wasting your time.
But do you help them find or look for the red flags that you could probably see, because you're more of the neutral third party? Where that to me is, people get so emotionally excited that they might not look for that, and so you can help them with that.
They do. And that's a real big stumbling block for most people, is that, they've come from a relationship that, even though it ended, there were still probably lots of things they liked about it, and they're so eager to have those feelings back and to get in a relationship again that they're willing to take anybody that pays attention to them, and that's exactly the wrong approach. Our job is to screen people out that are not a good fit, so you don't waste your time, energy, get emotionally, physically invested in someone to figure out, oh, this is not a good fit. So we really work hard on screening out people and looking for those red flags, and we work on questions to ask. Say for example, if you were a person that loved to travel, and you're meeting this potential partner for coffee, rather than to say, oh, do you like to travel, and make it feel like an interrogation, you could ask a question such as, how many times were you out of the country last year traveling? Almost implying that they have been out of the country and travel. And there's lots of ways to ask questions so that it's not a job interview, and because you're constantly assessing, is this someone that I'm interested in or not? And of course, the basic questions, children, ages, and all that. It's really important to find out a lot of information that first time you meet, because you need to decide whether it's someone you want to meet again.
Betty, before we move ahead, I think our viewers would be interested in knowing a little bit about you and your background, and how did you get into this field, and what positions you to be the expert on this. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I was an interior designer for over 20 years. I loved my job. I worked for myself, and I was raising a family with my husband, who had 4 children from a previous marriage, and I had 2. So between us, we had 6. It was a busy time. And then after 17 years, things started changing, and he became involved with someone else, which caused the end of the marriage, and I was devastated. I was suddenly single, unprepared, didn't see it coming, all those things. So I was really stuck in a bad place of life, and had to rediscover myself. So I worked with a life coach, and she really helped me to move forward. And what I liked about life coaching was that you acknowledge the past, but you don't stay in it, and you respect it, but you move forward. It's like, okay, this is what happened. We acknowledged it. Now, what's your goals? How are we going to move forward with this? So I worked with her for a while, and she was so helpful to me that I wanted to be able to help other people. So I got my training. I got my life coach certification first, and then I got a certification for singles, and then I went on to get my board certification. So it's not just about life experiences, it's about having the credentials and the training to really help people to be able to move forward. And I love what I do. I
Yeah.
see people get in happy relationships every day and really do the hard work and know that, they're getting what they want and need. So I just love it.
Great.
You're certainly making a difference, I can tell.
Thank you.
So what if we talk about the area that's of most concern to many people who are divorced who have children? How do we bring children into the equation in the best possible way? When, how, what we should look for, and all the guidance you have in that regard?
Well, people need to understand that dating is a process with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And in the beginning, you're meeting lots of people. You meet them initially to decide if it's someone you want to spend more time with. The second stage is experiencing someone and spending time with them. And of course, the third stage is, getting in a committed relationship. And I advise my clients not to introduce their children to everyone they're dating. It's too confusing for them. They're processing enough, and to wait until you're in that committed relationship stage to introduce them to, the person that you're going to spend time with, and it's going to be part of their lives. So it's the opposite of sooner is better, later is better in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
And to talk to your children and say, that I'm dating. Reassure them, that you love them unconditionally, and say this is part of my grown-up life, and not that you're asking for their permission, but to have that conversation, or as many conversations as you need to have till they, are comfortable with it. So,
I like the way you're separating it to say, this is our life, but then mommy or daddy has a grown-up life. And I think that's important to separate that so that we can respect both and know that you're a human being as well, not that you don't love them anymore or anything of that sort. But I think that really helps kids understand, especially as you get older.
yeah, and regardless of kids' age, it can be uncomfortable, for teenagers to see you express affection, with this person, that you're dating. It's confusing for them, and young children might feel, abandonment. So I think it's really important to talk to them. And something a lot of my clients have been guilty of is whenever they're with their children, they're not giving them the undivided attention. They're on the phone with the person, or this person of interest, and texting or on talking to them, and I think that's really hurtful for the kids. They feel threatened by that. And so I always say, when you're with your kids, be with your kids. Look them in the eye, talk to them, spend good quality time with them, so they don't feel so threatened by this other person.
Yes, as a divorce and parenting coach, many of my clients find that their kids are sabotaging new relationships. Do you have any tips and advice about the tummy aches that appear and the sudden desire that the kids have, the excuses they make up in ways that they want to keep you from dating or getting out there or enjoying your new partner?
Well, I suggest, that they talk to the children, but not to let them sabotage or control their grown-up life, and to reassure them, that you love them, you're not going to abandon them, you're there for them, you're part of a family, and this new person is going to be an extension of the family. You're not leaving your children for this other person. They're going to be a part of their lives. And I think it's really important, before you introduce your children to this significant person, is to have a conversation with both of them, so they kind of know what to expect, and don't feel like you have to speak for your children. You know, if one of them says something that's not quite so nice, this potential partner should be able to respond to that. And I think just being ourselves, and maybe a short activity like putt-putt golf or going for pizza, you know, so there is an end in sight for that first time they meet. And just be yourself, and don't feel like you have to play the mediator for both parties, because they need to get to know one another.
Definitely, and not feel threatened. And I think you hit a really good point where you were saying, when you're with your kids, be with your kids and give them that quality time so that they don't feel as though, you know, they're sharing too much at first, at the beginning. I know myself, working with some women, and they started to date, they did do the mistake of introducing the people, the men too soon. And it got to the point where the kids were like, oh, well, who's next? You know, okay, you know, who's this week or who's this month? You know, and so I think that's really, really important. Is, you know, let the kids know that you do have a social life, that you are going out and so forth, but definitely you don't have to introduce them every time, because I know that after a while the kids just say, really, whoever, you know. Have you found that too?
Right. They don't need to know the specifics of your dating life, who you're going with or where. You know, they just need to know that it's, you know, one of your grown-up activities, no different than going to work, going to the gym, spending time with your friends, bowling, whatever activities that you do outside your children, and that you're not asking their permission. And to really separate the difference between, because it does get to be a revolving door of, you know, who are you dating this week, who are you going out with, and two, involving your children in those conversations. You know, oh, what did you think of him? Did you like him or her? You know, that's problematic for me. You're putting them in an adult situation that they're just not ready for.
And you probably don't know yourself, so you know, you're asking it, say for example, a 10-year-old, what do you think? You know, I think as you get more involved and you find that this might be the one, you know, that's a different situation. But no, if it's this weekend I dated Sam and next week I dated Bob, you know, and what did you think? You know, that type of thing. Something that I'd like to touch upon that you mentioned a lot, and this is where I see a lot of people having trouble dating online, and you've mentioned the common theme here quite a bit was the word a committed relationship.
Right.
And I've talked to women who said, I could write a book about my dating online. I've up to 40 men, 50 men, 60 men, and I'm looking for a committed relationship. Anything you could touch upon there, Betty, that could help our listeners, because that's probably something that they're thinking.
Right, and it's important to be very clear about your intentions of dating. Dating is a process. It's the journey, so to speak, not the destination. When you're looking for a committed relationship, and if the other person doesn't have the same relationship goals, you're wasting your time. You know, get offline or click them off or block them, whatever you need to do, because it's not going anywhere. And it's important to be very clear about that in your profile, who you are and what you're looking for, so that they don't waste their time on that.
And along those same lines, I'd really love you to address something about intimacy. When, how far, how do you know you're in your comfort zone? What are you telling your clients about that?
Well, the problem with intimacy early on in a relationship is, you know, you cross that physical, emotional boundary, so you're already invested in it, and it can get very complicated whenever you realize that the relationship isn't a good fit. You really need to take your time to get to know that person. I read a research article recently about that said if you are intimate on your first date, it really doesn't affect your relationship success. And what their point was, you know, whether you're either compatible or you're not. And when, you know, sex happens is or was irrelevant in this research study. Well, yes and no, because you've already crossed some emotional boundaries for men. Maybe that was their intention, or women, but we get emotionally invested in it, and it gets hard to break it off sometimes whenever you can see the red flags and know that this is not a good relationship. So I always tell people to take your time, be sure you're ready for that, and it's important to keep, your emotional and physical boundaries in relationships. That way you don't lose yourself in the dating process.
I know one woman said to me, well, I've dated him 6 times, so I think we're okay. And it was almost like she was busy counting the amount of time she had the date versus checking in with herself to say, are we compatible, and is this really what I want? And so she said, well, I felt it was okay. It was 6 times that we dated, and I thought, So do you really think that really can mess things up, so to speak, or cloud the issue of finding the right one if you're just hopping into bed so fast? Sorry.
I do. I feel like that, you've taken the relationship to that emotional, physical place that maybe it's just not ready for. And then it clouds your thinking. Maybe, that you're having this, wonderful intimacy with this person, and you overlook the red flags. He's this, or he did that, or he was rude to the waiter, or different things that maybe you would be a little more objective if you hadn't invested yourself quite so heavily.
Yeah.
And keeping your personal boundaries is very important, especially if you've been in a long-term relationship and just starting to date, because this is a stranger. It's dangerous, for lots of reasons. That, of course, the diseases and everything else. It's something else that a person hasn't had to deal with if they've been married the last 20 years and just getting back out and don't realize how really scary, it's life-threatening. So, and I've read that the biggest growing number of people with HIV are in retirement communities.
Yeah. Yes.
So it is
Scary.
scary. It's scary, and it's something to consider. And maintaining your personal boundaries and your personal integrity is very important in the beginning stages of dating, because the biggest fear that my clients have is fear of rejection. So sometimes they so desperately want to be in this relationship, they're willing to cross those boundaries to get it. And then they end up rejected for whatever reason, and they're more hurt by what happened than how they maintain their boundaries.
It becomes a vicious cycle, because at that point there we might be saying, well, this person here, I got emotionally involved, but now I'm not sure what's going on. Does the person really like me? I mean, it just really seems to muddle the mess of a relationship, and we get sidetracked as what our true intentions are of what we want in a relationship.
I was wondering if you could share with us, how do you know you found a keeper, the real thing?
Well, there are markers. Do you share and compatibility is key. Do you share the same life goals? Do you share the same relationship goals? Not that you have to be alike on everything. It's shared similar values. I always tell people, if you were both exactly alike, one of you would not be necessary. So don't expect that. But how did they feel? For example, a lady told me that she went to the grocery store, and the salesperson made change and gave her too much back. So she told her and gave her the money back. And then when she went on a date, this is how she felt like she knew he was the right one. She went on a date that night and told her date what had happened. And he said, "Oh, really? What'd she say when you gave the money back?" Before she told him the rest of the story. So in that instance, they reacted the same way. So that was really important to her. Shared values is just critical. If you don't have those, you can have wonderful things that you share, but it's for the longevity, it's not going to work out. You know, and are your needs being met,
Absolutely.
by this person? How do they make you feel when you're together? They may not be, the tall, dark, and handsome person that you thought that you wanted, kind of the cherry on the top. But how do you feel when you're with them? Do they make you feel safe? Do you feel secure? Do you feel like they have your back? All those more intuitive feelings. But
Go ahead.
it's a lot about being objective to with them, and that's hard to do when you meet somebody that you like, because you get caught up in the emotions, and when you're so emotionally charged, it's hard to step back and really be a good observer.
Especially if they're whining and dining you, it's pretty tough to stay focused. But also, I know I found a red flag a lot of my clients would be saying at different times. I'm kind of checking in to see if we don't have the same value on some particular topic. So, like this woman said, she's really an avid gardener, and it got to the point where she started to see that he kind of tolerated it at the beginning. Oh, that's cute, that's nice. And then as they went on, it's like you just thought, oh, this is so boring. You're not going to spend the afternoon in the garden, are you? So, I mean, the red flags started to come up. Didn't show probably till like a couple of months later, but that's pretty important. Yeah. Takes time. Betty, I want to make sure people know how to connect with you, and then also some of the programs that you offer that you can help with them to really, tune in and find that right partner.
They can find me at befreetolove.com. Some of the programs I offer, it's based on time. A lot of times I have programs, but they're pretty customized to wherever the person's at and what they need. I have a program that's just basically for online dating to help them, get their profile up and running, good pictures, what to look for, how to email back, what to say, those kinds of things. But we do the work on who you are, what you want, and how to get what you want. We're not just going to talk about it. We're going to get out there and do some stuff and make this happen. So it's important to have a strategy. So we work a lot on dating strategies.
Well, I like the idea that you're hanging in there with them even after the profile, and you're working with them as they're getting emails and helping them, like we said before, look for red flags or maybe how to even respond. And so I think that's probably where the hand-holding is important, or just as important.
Right, and I usually suggest to people to get one general site, one general online dating site, and then one more specific, maybe to your interests or hobby. Could be a religious affiliation. There are thousands of online dating sites. If you're a Star Wars fan, there's a dating site out there for you. Anything you can imagine. It really narrows the group of like-minded people, and it increases your odds of finding someone.
Versus the general ones that we see promoted on TV, you're saying somewhat.
Right. They can be pretty overwhelming.
So, excuse me. So what is a takeaway that you want to leave us with to remember what's really important?
What's really important is loving yourself first before you can love somebody else, and really getting to know yourself and what you need and want out of your life and relationship. And when you're happy, whether you're in a relationship or not, that's the best thing you can give yourself.
Absolutely. Well, Betty, I'm thrilled that you were on the show today. You gave us some great insights to not only working with your children, supporting your children, but especially taking care of yourself, the red flags to look for. So really some good information. And once again, your website is so that they can connect with you.
It's befreetolove.com.
Great, thanks. And Roz, any other thoughts and words of wisdom too you want to share with us?
Well, I totally supported everything that Betty was talking about regarding having children after divorce and then moving on and being single, that it's very important to respect your children and not let them feel ever that there's a conflict or that they come second in your life. And if you're doing that, you're able to move ahead, and they'll be more receptive to entering that other phase with you and supporting you.
Absolutely. And as we all know, children can make it difficult. So taking these right steps is so, so important. And we all want to be happy together, for sure. And also, to see this show again, go to divorceview.com. And while you're there, take your time and go over to the right side panel. Roz has some great programs there to support you. I have some great programs there to support you as well. But you can tune into the show and watch it as many times as you like. So we're just thrilled that you're here. Tune in weekly to learn all kinds of things to support you during and after divorce. So until then, or until next week, have a great week, and we'll see you then.